Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio. This is All Access Med School Admissions, where we're bringing a voice to medical school admissions officers. Hello again, everybody. I'm Christian Essman. Today I'm going to be talking with Jen Stephan Kimball, one of my really good admissions friends from the Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. Jen is a fantastic guest who brings a unique perspective to the admissions process, as she used to be a pre-health advisor. We discuss a lot of different topics in this episode, including a lot of information about Vanderbilt. We had a lot of fun putting this show together. But before we get into the interview, let me give you a little bit of background information about Vanderbilt. Since 1873, Vanderbilt University School of Medicine has called the capital city of Nashville, Tennessee, home. Nashville is also known as Music City, USA, and is known as the home of country music. The medical school is a private institution with a mission to improve human health. They achieve this goal by preparing physicians, scientists, and educators for positions of worldwide leadership, discovering and disseminating new knowledge that advances understanding of health and disease, providing compassionate, personalized patient care of the highest quality and service to the local, national, and global communities, embracing a culture of lifelong learning, innovation, and continuous improvement, creating a diverse and broadly inclusive community of faculty, staff, and students that enriches the learning community and ensures excellence in research and patient care. A little admissions background on Vanderbilt: they accept applicants from Canada, international students, and applicants who have the DACA status. Since they are a private institution, there's no state residency requirements, and they accept applicants from outside the state of Tennessee. This medical school received a little over 5,600 applications in 2018 and interviewed 562 applicants for a class of 93. About 52% of their classes are comprised of women, and about 86% of their class comes from states outside of Tennessee. And last year, 22% of their class self-identified as underrepresented in medicine. Based on AMCAS matriculant data for 2018, 85% of incoming students had community service or volunteer experiences, 89% had physician shadowing or clinical observation experiences, 88% had medical or clinical community service or volunteering experiences, 32% had some type of paid medical or clinical experience, and 98% had research or lab experience. The median GPA for students accepted to Vanderbilt in 2018 was 3.93, with a range of 3.71 to 4.0. The median MCAT for those accepted was 521, with a range of 514 to 525. The first 2 years of the curriculum at Vanderbilt are called the Foundations of Medical Knowledge and Foundations of Clinical Knowledge, and the grading system in the first 2 years is pass-fail. The third and fourth years are called the Immersion Phase and are graded in a tiered system of honors, high pass, pass, and fail. Ultimately, they award both MD and MD PhD degrees to their graduates, and they also offer a unique program called the Medical Innovators Development Program, or MIDP. It's a 4-year PhD to MD training program that's tailored to engineers and applied scientists who have existing PhD degrees. All right, there you go. There's a little background on one of the medical schools there in Music City, USA. This interview with Jen Stephan Kimball clocks in at around an hour and a half. Let me tell you, it's packed full of information, obviously, about Vanderbilt, but also we kind of touch on a variety of different application tips. And we wrap up the show by answering listener questions about medical school interview days. So with that, let's get after it with Jen Stephan Kimball from Vanderbilt. Jennifer Stephan Kimball is the Director of Admissions at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. Before assuming this role, she created the Office of Pre-Health Advising at Georgia Tech and served as its director for 7 years. She also was a pre-med advisor at Emory University for over 5 years, along with 1 year at Georgia State University. Mrs. Kimball recently served on the AAMC's Letter of Evaluation Guidelines Task Force and has been very active in the National Association of Advisors of Health Professions for several years. Mrs. Kimball has a Bachelor of Science in Education degree from the University of North Alabama and a Master of Higher Education Administration from the University of South Carolina. I've known Jen since her pre-health advising days at Georgia Tech, and I couldn't be happier to be talking with her today. So Jen, welcome to All Access.
Hi, thank you. Well, thanks for having me.
Sure. Okay, so we just read your bio. What did we leave out? What was the fun stuff we left out?
Oh, the fun stuff. Well, I love getting involved in like the community that I live in. And so I enjoy exploring different places to hang out, listen to great music, places to eat.
What do you listen to?
Music-wise?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to embarrass myself when I tell you this, but I'm going to see the New Kids on the Block concert on Thursday.
I was just going to say the mixtape tour.
Yes, that is what I'm doing. So yes, I'm a big Donnie Wahlberg fan, and so I am really looking forward to going to that concert Thursday.
That's your guilty pleasure. That's your guilty pleasure. Oh my gosh. So Nashville's, you've been there now how many years?
So we moved here in 2013, which feels like it was yesterday. But I mean, I still think Y2K just happened. So I'm really not a good judge of time, obviously.
So Nashville's been your new community, really.
It has.
So what do you get involved in there? What are you doing there?
So I have a daughter, and she is in the 5th grade. And so I do a lot of stuff with her school, and she's involved in theater. So we go to a lot of plays, and she is also learning how to twirl a baton. Oh. So we now do majorette stuff, which is fun. But yeah, and there's a lot of history in Middle Tennessee. So I was a history major as an undergrad. So I love learning about that.
Cool. So I remember talking with you a few years ago when you made the switch from the pre-health advising world to the medical school admissions side. What was that like? What was surprising to go from one side to the other?
Well, I remember when I was leaving Georgia Tech, I remember talking to the dean of students at the time, and I said, one of my favorite things about working in higher education was working with students who are making the transition from high school to college. And he said something very observant at the time. He said, you're still working with students in transition. They're just transitioning from college to medical school. And I was like, oh, that's a good point. I think that's been kind of eye-opening. Is I guess I just assumed once med students started med school, they had it all figured out. But we're still working with students in transition, which I absolutely love. Getting them onboarded, getting them acclimated to a new community, new, traditions that we have here at Vanderbilt, those kind of things. I'm very lucky in that I get to work with some of the best people around. Our faculty are amazing. I remember being a little anxious about working in a medical school because I just assumed the faculty would be very, stoic and, I'm this neurosurgeon and I'm the smartest person in the room, but they're so humble and funny, great people to be around.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky with that.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of surprised about that transition for me. But our students are great. And I know your students are also. And so we're very fortunate to work with people who are really passionate about medicine and making a difference in patients' lives.
Yeah, I totally agree. Jen, what's something that people are surprised to learn about you?
I would say I grew up in Germany. So I lived in Germany for 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is surprising.
Absolutely. So whenever my students go and they'll do like an internship or something in Germany, I get very excited. And I'm like, oh, you need to go here and do this. And and make sure you try this food and, things like that. My German is not very good anymore because I just don't get to use it very often. But yeah, I love it. And so I love learning about different cultures. So I have not, but we're going to Italy this summer, my husband and I. Yeah. And when I was a kid, I went to Italy. And so I'm excited about showing my daughter Italy. But I think I might go back and go to Germany again. But the challenge is just in my mind, it was such a great place to grow up. And now seeing it as an adult, it might be different. And I don't know if I'm quite ready for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. Like keep your childhood memories, like everything.
Exactly.
The way they are. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So that's kind of something. So I'm always interested in like when people travel to different countries or are from all over the globe. I always love learning about their culture and background.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So let's just dive right into it and talk about how does someone get into Vanderbilt? And like just start from the screening process. So I've done my homework and it sounds like you have a screening process, like a pre-screening process. So Jen, just kind of walk us through what that looks like when you're starting off as an applicant to Vanderbilt.
Sure. And the first thing I would say is the term rolling admissions really plays a huge part in our admissions process. And I know Case is probably the same way. I mean, the early bird really does get the worm with this. So AMCAS is the central application that we use. It goes live in May for applicants to start entering information. They can't formally submit it until the beginning of June. Medical schools won't find out that they're applying until the end of June. We're a little bit different. We're one of the very few schools that will only receive verified AMCAS applications. A lot of schools, they'll get a list that Jane Smith and at this email address is applying to their school. So secondary might already go out. For us, we're a little bit different. And so we actually wait until we receive the verified AMCAS application so that we can see, so that we can see everything. And so sometimes applicants, they'll hit submit June 1 and they wait and they wait and they wait. And so they'll email us, did you get my stuff? Did you get my stuff? And we're like, oh, actually nobody's got your stuff. We won't get it until, the end of the month. So just sit tight for a little bit. Now, a lot of our committee members take 4th of July week off. So we don't actually start working until around the 8th of July. And that's when we'll open up the applicant's file, look at the application materials to decide if we're going to send a secondary or not to the candidate. We used to only give secondaries to a very small portion of the applicants, but over time we've opened that up a lot more. We don't have a specific number of how many secondaries we're allowed to extend, but we'll have roughly 6,000 people that will apply to us, and we'll send out roughly 3,500 secondaries to our school. And so the secondary application has 2 essays. One is an autobiographical sketch, and the second essay is tell us about a time that you've been challenged.
Okay.
So those are 2 essays for the secondary. So what gets a student into getting a secondary, we basically are going to ask ourselves a couple of different questions. The first question is this a candidate who can handle the rigors of medical school? And we don't have a cutoff GPA or cutoff MCAT because your GPA might be a little bit lower because you had to work full time while you were in college. Well, that's not fair to ding you on a GPA if that was the issue. Or you might have started off in college with a low GPA and gone up every year after that, but your cumulative really hasn't changed a whole lot. So, but we look at kind of everything to answer that question if you can handle the rigors. We also look at the MCAT performance with that.
Sure.
And then we look to see what extracurriculars you've done. It's really easy to get a 4.0 if the only thing you've done in college is study. But if you've been involved in organizations, if you've been an officer, if you've done research, if you've been engaged in the community, that kind of stuff just really enforces the fact that you've been around people, that you've exposed yourself to a healthcare setting, that you're intellectually curious, that kind of thing.
Jen, do pre-screeners take notes of in the application at that point and then wait for the secondary to come and go, oh yeah, we've seen this one before. These were the previous notes from the pre-screener? Or is the second like when the kind of like the second or the full screen come in, is that a brand new group that sees these applications?
That is a really good question. So our screening committee is a different committee than our interview selection committee.
Okay.
And that's different than our executive admissions committee. So different eyes look at the candidate's application. So there might be something in the application materials that the screener goes, ooh, let's ask more about such and such. And so they'll make a note on that file. And then when the individual is invited to interview, the interviewer may ask about that.
Okay.
And so that way there's kind of that continuity, but it is a different set of eyes. And that helps us kind of get away from any kind of bias that we might have when we're reviewing files.
What is there an experience or experiences that kind of jump out at your screeners? Do you find is there any kind of patterns you've seen or just comments that you hear from screeners like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, or this is so interesting?
We hear that a lot about everything. So it's kind of neat. Like our faculty will get really excited about a candidate and they'll go, oh, wow, she did Teach for America, or she is Fulbright or Rhodes Scholar and stuff. Just having those unique experiences are really helpful to make a candidate stand out. So I will tell you that a lot of our faculty will joke and they'll say, oh, I would never have gotten into medical school now, considering, how amazing these candidates are nowadays that are applying. So that always kind of makes me laugh about that. But yeah, so we'll have a number of students, over 60% of our incoming class have had at least 1 year off before starting medical school. And that's a trend that a lot of schools, I'm sure you guys see it too, right?
Yeah. You said that's the trend. I totally agree that most students or applicants are doing that these days.
Exactly. And we'll often have people who will email, like prospective students, that will say, is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I work at the NIH for a year and do research? Absolutely. You do what you feel a calling to do right now. Med schools aren't going anywhere. We're going to be here tomorrow. We're going to be here 10 years from now. We'll be here 50 years from now. So do the things that you want to do before you apply to medical school.
I was reading on your MSAR that Vanderbilt does not require medically related experiences, but there's recommendations of how you can get medically related experiences. You don't require shadowing. I guess that's what I read. So how do you feel? How does your group feel about medically related experiences?
So that's a really good question. Yeah. So we've moved away from quote unquote requiring shadowing hours. And the reason why is, to be really honest with you, it could be a barrier to entry to the profession.
Right.
If you're from a social circle that you don't know any doctors, it's going to be very hard for you to cold call a doctor and say, hi, Dr. Smith, I know we've never met. You don't know who I am. Can I watch you do your stuff? Can I be in the room when you're with the patient? They're like, no, hang up. They're not going to want to entertain that conversation. As opposed to if you're from a family where you've got a lot of family members that are physicians, you've got people in your social circle who are physicians, it's a lot easier to get those shadowing hours. So that's why we've moved away from requiring it. But we do like for our candidates to have some sort of medical exposure, less as a checklist for us, but more of an opportunity for that individual to really flesh out if this is what they want to do. By observing the doctor-patient relationship, what the other health professionals do on the medical staff, it really helps the candidate be able to answer, why do you want to be a doctor? We get a more robust answer than, well, I love science and I love to help people, so therefore I should be a doctor. It allows them to really come up with something that's more personal as to why they want to be a physician.
So are there questions during the interview, which we'll get to the interview process, but I'm sure this is kind of teased out in the interview, right? Like, how do we know you've investigated this enough? If we're not looking at certain number of hours, how do we know that you really kind of know what you're getting yourself into?
Exactly. And that's something that our committee might ask somebody is, what has been the most fulfilling medical experience that you've had, and, I was a scribe for a year after college. Okay, tell me more about that. Well, I was responsible for doing X, Y, and Z. How did you get interested in that? That kind of stuff. But we have students who have worked at hospice care facilities, nursing homes, even
scribing.
Scribing is huge.
It's the new industry. Yeah,
it really is. It absolutely is. In fact, one of my students I'm just thinking about, she did a panel for some prospective students, and some of the prospective students asked, did you have an experience when you were in college that really kind of said, this is what I meant to do for my career? And she said, I always thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then when I started scribing, that really sealed the deal for me.
Yeah. Yeah, we see so many people doing it. It's the new cottage industry for pre-med students.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's a great opportunity to kind of peek behind the curtain and get paid. And
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would do the same thing if I were pre-med.
What is there? Do you feel there's a level of importance placed on any particular experiences? I know some schools, they really value service or they really value research. Is there any kind of like a mental ranking or a ranking or a point system that you guys place during screening on experiences, or is it just kind of them all pulled together into context?
Sure. Yeah, so we have a very holistic review of our applicant. So therefore, we don't have a number system like we give 0.5 value to the medical experiences. We give no, we're not that sophisticated. So we just kind of look at everything that the candidate has accomplished. I will say that we're really focused on our mission here at Vanderbilt, and that drives our admissions process. And so our mission is to educate physician leaders who are going to be scholars in medicine. And the term scholars in medicine is a fancy phrase for people who are going to be a researcher. And I want to clarify that I don't mean researcher by, okay, now you're going to do wet lab research for the rest of your life. You're more intellectually curious. You want to do things and create policies and something to change and better your patients' lives. So be it you are a cardiologist in downtown Chicago, or you are a primary care physician in rural Appalachia. You're constantly curious about what you can do to change your health outcomes for your patients.
So, that gets me to research. I noticed in your entering class stats that 99 to 98% of your incoming students have research experience. So I got to believe they're not all doing wet lab stuff. So you define it broadly. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
I mean, we have the whole gamut. Now, I will say research is baked into our curriculum here. Typically, students will do research. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about the curriculum, but research is something our students do during the third year. And I had a student that we admitted a couple of years ago, and that was one of her concerns was, I did wet lab research when I was an undergrad, and I really did not enjoy it. And I'm concerned about going to Vanderbilt where I'm going to have to do research. And it's like, just scrub the notion that all research is wet lab research from your brain. Think of something you're curious about. What are you interested in? And she ended up doing her research on ESL patients and their OB-GYN experience. It was phrased better than what I'm stumbling out right now during this podcast.
Now I hear you say the doors of opportunity open or expand immensely as a medical student for research, right? Especially at research-intensive institutions like Vanderbilt and like Case. So your undergraduate experience in research shouldn't paint everybody's research experience. Because sometimes in undergrad, it's just what you have access to, right? Well, that's refreshing to hear. So, but I guess the test is for applicants to Vanderbilt is if you say you hate research and you have research baked into your curriculum, that's got to be a little like you got to go, well, like you do know you're going to have to do it's 4 to 6 months or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
You could be grouchy for a long time.
And we like happy people. So we want to make sure that this is the right fit for candidates. And that's something that we are assessing during the application process is that there are lots of amazing medical schools out there. Is this the right place to launch your career? When we're looking at the entire package of everything with the AMCAS, with the secondary, with the letters of recommendation, with the secondary, with the interview, with everything, the entire experience, is this the right launching pad for you? And for some people, they are great candidates, but this is not the right program for them.
Yep. Okay, so let's talk about, so you make it through the screening process. You guys have said we did the pre-screen. We said in the secondary, we love what we've read. Let's meet them. So the interview day comes. I know you interview on, I think, Mondays and Fridays.
We do.
And so when somebody comes to the interview day at Vanderbilt, what can they expect? What's it like? Walk us through kind of that experience. What does it look like and feel like?
Sure. So what'll happen is, so we'll interview about 500, 550-ish MD students for our medical school. And so when we reach out to you to say, hey, we'd love for you to interview, we interview from the beginning of September to the end of January on Mondays and Fridays. We love it when you're here for the weekend. So if you interview on Monday, we'd love to have you here for the weekend to get a better taste and feel for what our community is about. Same thing if you interview on Friday, we'd love for you to be here for the weekend. Because Nashville is a fun city, lots of things to do. It's also part of your experience process here. Not only are we interviewing you, you're interviewing us, to make sure this is the right fit for you. And so the night before the interview, our students host you over for like a pizza party
at one of the school or somebody's at a restaurant.
So right now we're doing it at a restaurant kind of across the street from the medical center.
Okay.
But it's totally casual. Wear your t-shirt and jeans. Don't feel like you have to get gussied up. We are not a part of that other than the fact that we purchase the food for y'all. It's kind of come and go as you please sort of thing. And it's totally laid back and chill. It's your opportunity to meet some students that are currently here, ask those questions. Are these the people you'd want to be with the next 4 years for medical school? That kind of thing. So then the next morning, you'll join us like around 7:30, 7:45. We'll have breakfast, coffee for y'all, sit around, kind of chit chat a little bit. And then we do a formal welcome. So it'll be myself and one of the faculty.
Okay. I was going to ask you what your role is.
Yeah. So we kind of do an overview of Vanderbilt, kind of get to know you a little bit, make sure that the interviewees know each other, where you're from, fun fact, that kind of thing. And then we do our interviews, and we'll have 2 interviews on interview day. One will be an open file summary interview. You can expect questions like, so I see here that you were treasurer of your fraternity. What did that experience teach you? Or, you did research in neuroblastoma. How did you get interested in that? Those kind of questions from your file.
So it's open file. Open file have access to everything. Letters of rec, MCAT score.
Well, actually, not letters of recommendation. We do blind them to that just to prevent, on the off chance an interviewer might say, so your, biology professor told us this about you, that kind of thing.
I know. You hate that.
Yeah. So we blind them to that. We
tell our interviewers, you can't, the letters are confidential.
Yes.
Read them, but forget that you read them.
Exactly. So we don't even let them read it just to prevent any awkwardness from occurring. And so then, but they can ask questions from your secondary, your essay. So anything that the candidates put out in their application materials is fair game for the interviewer.
And academics, you can see academics and metric and MCATs. Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's the open file. That's the longer interview.
That'll last 50 minutes to an hour, depending. And then we'll have a short interview, and that will be a closed file interview, and that will last about 20 to 30 minutes. And so the interviewer will ask from a list of prepared questions, and they're more behavioral based. Tell me about a time when you've been under stress, when you've been in an ethically challenging situation, or just kind of those kind of questions. So then after those interviews are over, students have a chance to kind of relax a little bit. Then we will take them to a curriculum talk where they'll learn a little bit more about our curriculum from one of our leads in the curriculum, like our associate dean for the curriculum might present. And then after that's over, then we'll do lunch with the medical students, a tour with medical students, and then we'll do another session on our research commitment, because we want to do a lot of myth busting that you're not going to be stuck doing wet lab research.
Right.
We also have a talk about our commitment to diversity and community health. And then I meet up with them at the end of the day to discuss the application process and how financial aid works.
I got it.
So we'll have, that'll be an interview day for us. So usually students will leave Vanderbilt like around 3:30, 4 o'clock. But
so it's a full day.
It's a full day. Exactly. I do want to say that we don't vet the students that our interviewees are meeting. They're not our ambassadors, even though we have an ambassadors team. They're not necessarily our ambassadors. We put up a sign-up sheet hey, would you like to go have dinner with the interviewee? Sign here. If you want to eat lunch and give a tour, sign here. And the reason for this is we want to be as organic as possible. We don't want it to be the cookie cutter applicants who have been drilled on what to say and what not to say. We want to, because like I said, the interviewee is also interviewing
authentic.
Us. Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. So, yeah.
Okay, I want to go back to two things. The second interview that's shorter, is that with a faculty member? Is that with an administrator? Is that with like you or somebody from your team? Is there a student?
It's going to be faculty.
Okay.
And I do want to clarify that our faculty interviewers, they might be faculty members that are also physicians, or it might be faculty members who are the PhD scientists that also teach in the curriculum. So it might be a cardiovascular researcher who might be interviewing you because he or she teaches in the curriculum. So they're people who are tied to the educational experience for the medical students. And
the second thing I wanted to go back to was you said you have a kind of an icebreaker session in the interview day, just so that people can get to know each other and you get to know them. And you said, you said your name, where you're from, and a fun fact. And I think it's important. Applicants, interviewees should have a fun fact ready.
Yes.
I mean, that's one appropriate. I hate to give that away, but that's a data point. But I mean, but you should have a fun fact ready for these interview days.
I know. Yeah, we should do a podcast like
just
of what
crazy fun
horror
facts.
stories that we've heard on interview day for the fun fact, and we're like, "Ooh, that was unexpected."
Yeah. There's a hidden tip right there in the middle of the podcast. Is that you have a fun fact ready that's just appropriate and ready to go. Now, I will say, when you have your pizza dinner the night before, you gotta admit that's still like the interview starts when they land in Nashville or when they get on the plane to Nashville. I mean, like if somebody shows up to the pizza thing and is just inappropriate, or you know what I mean, you're going to hear about that, right?
I will hear about it.
Yeah.
I usually hear the positive things, though.
Of course. Yeah.
Usually people will come and they'll say,
"Oh my God,
I loved so and so. She's fantastic. She's great." Or yes, exactly. Or funny things like, I went to elementary school with her big sister. And I'm like, well, that's totally random. So sometimes those kind of funny things happen. But sometimes we'll get like I don't want to tell on anybody, but, he just didn't seem very interested in us. He was checking his Facebook the entire time on his phone. He was looking at memes. That's not awesome.
I mean, so I think that the tip here is that, your interview, while you want it to be all genuine and authentic with the students, and that's perfectly understandable. You have to show, I think, be aware of your surroundings and how you're acting as an interviewee, because it starts when you land in that city or even when you get on the plane.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because, a lot of people fly into Nashville who work at Vanderbilt. I've been on flights before where randomly enough, some of the faculty I work with are on my plane. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And they're like, I was vacationing and so. And, it's just kind of random. I mean, Nashville, although it's a big city, it still has a lot of small town feel to it.
Yeah. You never know who you're going to be sitting beside.
Nope. Nope. In fact, we had an interviewee that our director of financial aid, who is not part of the admissions process, pulled me aside and she goes, I really like so-and-so. And I was like, well, that's kind of random. And she said, yeah, I bumped into him in the parking deck because he parked where she was. And she said he wanted to make sure he was heading the right direction for his interview. She said, and we just started talking. And she goes, I expected him to just take off once I pointed him in the right direction on where to find the building. And he didn't. He just walked with me and talked because he didn't know who I was. And she goes, I love that guy. And, we made him an offer. And that's part of the reason why was he really stood out in a positive way.
Yep. That's so when people ask, how do you stand out in the interview day? I mean, it's just being yourself and being nice to everybody.
Oh, definitely. And that's the reason why our interviews are not Skype interviews.
Yep.
You're physically here because we're looking to see basically two main questions on your interview day. Number one, are you somebody that our patients are going to feel comfortable disclosing personal information to? And the second question is, are you somebody that your classmates are going to want to be around?
Yeah.
Are you so contrary that everything is a yeah, but, oh, it's a beautiful day outside. Yeah, but I think it's going to rain later on.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much to do here in Nashville. Yeah, but traffic is bad or whatever. Nobody wants to be around those people.
Right.
So we're trying to look and get rid of the yeah buts on interview day. Those do not appeal to us at all. And I'll tell you, there are people that we interview that look amazing on paper. And I don't know if they're just nervous or what, but they show up and the person we meet is not who we read about in these glowing letters of recommendations. And we're just like, okay, what just happened?
Yeah. You're scratching your head sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our interview day at Vanderbilt, and I'm sure y'all are the same way, it's not designed to stress you out. It's not designed to make you want to curl up in the fetal position and cry at the end of it. It's a way for us to kind of get to know you from what we've read on paper for all these months.
Yeah.
So if you're not comfortable enough to let your positive personality come out and it's just your negative personality because you're nervous or anxious about interviewing, that's kind of a concern of ours.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about interview day tips
at the end.
Love it. Questions at the end. So we're going to come back to that. More tips. So stay tuned. So let's talk about the next step. So you have your interview day. Now it's the executive admissions committee process. So after the interview, you take us into the admissions committee meeting. What are the discussions like? How does that all go down?
Sure. So the executive admissions committee will look at everything. So the letters of recognition, the AMCAS, the MCAT, the secondaries, the interview notes, any additional supplements that students have sent us. And so the executive admissions committee will look at this, and then they'll decide if this is somebody who's admissible or not for the program. And so typically, I always tell people on interview day, if you are admitted to Vanderbilt, you're probably admitted to all the other schools that you apply to and interviewed at, because we're all looking for the same thing. We're looking for positive people who are going to make a difference in healthcare and who are kind of mission compliant with what we're looking for. So, so then we'll kind of decide who we're going to accept from that. We have two waves of admissions. We have a December acceptance wave, and then we have a February acceptance wave. We intentionally under-offer our acceptances because we intend to pull from the wait list. The wait list is our chance to just kind of soften any kind of edges that we see with what the class is looking like, meaning we don't want a class of nothing but biology majors from, XYZ college, or what. So it gives us a chance to really kind of go, ooh, wow, that Russian literature PhD guy, he looks pretty good. Let's pull him in. That kind of thing. I think
that's really important to emphasize. So the wait list is not a bad place to be.
No.
Yeah. I don't think people hear that enough. But it's not a bad place to be.
It's not. And I wish we had a better term for wait list.
I know.
I kind of equate it to if you've flown somewhere and you're getting ready to land and the pilot comes on and goes, folks, we're going to circle around the airport a little bit. We're in a holding pattern. That voice that all pilots have. They teach you that. They teach you that in pilot school.
Right.
But these students are just in a holding pattern. We're just waiting for a spot for them to kind of come in and land.
Yeah.
And so
I've had students, our current students, and they kind of feel like, well, I know I came off the wait list or the alternate. I'm like, no. Like there's nothing wrong with you.
Nothing.
Like we have a great alternate list. Like it's not, I hate the word alternate or wait list. We just couldn't get to you at the time when we put those acceptances out. It's not, we didn't like you. It just, you got to draw the line somewhere.
You do. And absolutely. It is. We have a class of 96. And so, we can't.
You're interviewing 500 or 600 people.
Right. Absolutely. And it's not like college where, we wanted to have, 3,000 in our intern class, but we have, 4,000. And it's okay though, because we have plenty of lecture hall space and whatnot. I mean, y'all are probably the same way we are. We have a specific number we need to hit because we have, certain amount of medical and clinical opportunities for these students. We can't just let everybody in kind of thing. So
we have to hit a target.
Exactly. So, so our wait list, we work it very well. So we send out emails encouraging people, if you're on our wait list, stay in touch with us. This is what, we encourage you to send us a letter of interest, or if you're still interested in us. And so when we move to the wait list, we haven't heard from you. We just assume you've decided to go elsewhere, and that's fine. That's totally okay, But if you've sent us letters of interest that you're interested in being removed from the wait list, if you send us letters of intent, I will come to your school if you pull me from the wait list. That means something a little bit more, because you've taken time to draft something to send us to demonstrate your interest in our program.
I'm so glad you said that. You're not okay. So I've interviewed a couple other people, other medical schools, and they've all said the same thing. And so what I hope to accomplish in these interviews with multiple medical schools is that students start to hear themes.
Yeah.
Like, we want to hear from you.
Sure.
If you have updates, if you send a letter of intent, we want to get those.
Yes.
Because that shows us you're on our radar, and that you're like, we like you. Do you like us?
Right.
Kind of thing. So,
exactly. It's like when you're in the 5th grade and you write the little note, do you like me? Yes, no, or maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still out there. Absolutely. Yeah.
The one thing I will clarify, though, is if you send us a generic letter of interest or letter of intent, that you could just put your thumb over the word Vanderbilt and put Case Western or Pritzker. That doesn't help you out very much.
Or you just leave those names in there and send it.
Oh, yeah. We had a student who sent us a letter about how much she wanted to go to Duke. And so I was feeling really snarky that day. And I responded, I said, thanks for the letter. Did you want me to send this to Duke for you or what? And I never heard from her again. So pay attention to the details. Yeah,
that's a bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
I received that. I'm like, I can be happy to pass it along to my friends at Duke.
Exactly.
Oh man, that's cringeworthy.
It's really cringy. It's terrible. Man. I just feel so bad for him. But.
I know. Okay. So any other things about the selection process you'd like people to know? I mean, it sounds like you said, you under accept because you want to be able to, like how you said, kind of soften any edges with the people in the holding pattern. So how do people, if you're waitlisted at Vanderbilt, how do they send you letters of interest or let you know I have some updates? Is it like an upload through your portal, or do you like to get emails? Like, how does that work?
So it's a good question. So right now, for this cycle, students can email us, but for next cycle, we'll be using a new admissions platform for our secondary application and our admissions process. And the candidates will have the opportunity to upload themselves on there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you've now issued acceptances to people, and they come to Vanderbilt. They choose to come there.
Yeah.
What can they expect when they get to Vanderbilt? And what are some of the highlights? What are the first few days and weeks like as a first year medical student at Vanderbilt?
So I like for students to, so orientation for us is the 3rd Wednesday of July. I like it when students move here at the beginning of July because, first of all, we have one of the nation's largest 4th of July celebrations. There's usually lots of free concerts from performers that you've heard of in the area of downtown Nashville. That's called Broadway, which is where kind of all the bars are and stuff. But the Nashville Symphony Orchestra actually does a performance that goes in coordination with the fireworks show at the end. So it's really cool.
Yeah,
it's absolutely. So it's kind of a fun thing to do. So we encourage our students to kind of get early, and we also have a hot chicken festival. So you got to get some good hot chicken in you. So we do a lot of fun things, or the city does a lot of stuff during the summer to get people, pumped up and stuff. So what'll happen is that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and Saturday, we do orientation. And so some of it is like things you need to know as a medical student. Other things are just ways to get to know your classmates. Like I said, there's 96 of y'all. We need you guys to all get along well and get ready to progress in your medical education with these people.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be sorted into a hat or into a college. We
Mm-hmm.
have a sorting hat, very,
Mm-hmm.
very, I don't know if I'm allowed to say Harry Potter. Exactly. I don't want to get, copyright violations
You can
against
say
me.
that.
But you do get sorted into a college. And so in your college, you'll have 2 faculty mentors. You'll also have a band of faculty affiliate advisors that are there to support you. You'll also have a 4th year who's kind of a peer advisor as your
that's
first year
cool.
student. And then you'll have either a big brother or big sister in your college. So you'll have kind of your big family. So we do a lot to kind of get you pumped up and into smaller groups where that's kind of like your family. And we do learning communities with them too on Friday afternoons. But so we'll sort you into your college. And then that first week of school, the first I'm sorry, I failed to mention one other thing. That weekend we have optional orientation that we do things outdoors. So we might go and camp out somewhere or go hiking or pontooning or making s'mores or whatever you want to do. Yeah, just to get them outside a little bit and stuff. And in the first full week of class, as the foundations of the profession, we'll typically have a common book that we read. You get to know the faculty a little bit more, learn a little bit more about the history of medicine, things of that nature. We white coat you on Friday, and then you start classes the following Monday in the Foundations of Medical Knowledge track. And so the way it kind of works, and there's a lot of information on our website about it, but basically you'll have patient contact starting that second full week of school.
Yeah. Your website's very nicely laid out. So I think people can visit that and really get an idea of what that curriculum and that kind of structure looks like. So what would be some highlights that when you're out on the road and you're meeting students or prospective students at different colleges, what are some of the takeaways you want people to hear about Vanderbilt that are the highlights?
So I think first of all, like I said, the really innovative curriculum, the fact that during your first year, you'll have 2 afternoons per week that are protected study time for you. You'll have 2 afternoons where you are in physical diagnosis, where you're kind of learning and applying what you've learned about in the classroom experience that morning. And then you'll have what we call your continuity clinic that every, Thursday or whatever your schedule it is for your college, you'll go to the same clinic. You might go to the orthopedics clinic at the VA hospital, which is the building right behind us, or you might go to Children's Hospital for peds, whatever the case may be. But that's kind of where you learn a little bit more about the doctoring and how does this happen? How does that happen? When do you read the medical records? How do you, make notes in the medical chart? That kind of thing. So it's a good balance during your first year. We don't, like I said, keep you in this building from 8 to 5 in a lecture hall. We get you out and about a little bit more. I always equate our curriculum where it's so hands-on to if I were going to teach you how to change a flat tire, I wouldn't put you in a lecture hall. I would take you to a parking lot and hand you the tire iron and stand next to you and teach you how to, take the lug nuts off, by talking you through it and being there to be kind of supportive of you with that. So you do
case-based learning. I saw 3 days a week. Are students in the same group every week or per block, and then they're shuffled up with new people, or how does the small group working?
So there will be about 6 or 8 of you with a faculty mentor, and we'll split you up depending on what block you're in. So you won't be with the same people all year. You'll be with them for the same 6 weeks or so. And during the case-based learning, our students like to eat. So they usually bring in donuts and bagels. And one of our students had a quesadilla maker. He used to make quesadillas during case learning. So
at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, awesome.
Our students love munching. So, but it's kind of funny because sometimes you'll learn about what they're learning about. And you're like, how can you eat while you're learning that? That's so gross. But I guess they developed that iron stomach now. So that's how the case learning learning works for us. And then we also have team-based learning, where all 96 of you will be in the team-based learning room. And then we might divide you guys up into sections to learn about something. And then y'all come back together to teach each other about that, with the faculty kind of guiding you on that.
That's very cool. So you said the students have protected study time a couple days a week. So they can, that's just kind of flex time. They can study, they can go run errands, they could work out, they could do kind of whatever they want.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's whatever they want to do during that time. Now, we don't, I'm using air quotes here that you can't see, but we don't encourage students to join a research experience during their first year, because your first year, you need to be a first year medical student. Now, we do start kind of easing you into research and kind of talking about research methodologies, and stuff like that, and what are some things that we do research in here, but we don't shove it down your throat during your first year, because we need you to be a first year med student only.
So if a student comes to you and says, I really want to get involved in research my first year, you guys are kind of like, just time out, hang in there. We're going to teach you how to do it, but we have dedicated time coming, hang in there. Or can they do it in the summertime? Can they do summer research?
So they could, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think your summer, honestly, you need to be on the beach. You need to be at home with your family. You need to just do something where you turn your brain off from medical school for a little bit. And a lot of our students over the summer go on vacations together. Spring break here was just last week. And it seems like all my students went somewhere together. They rented a beach house. They went to San Diego. They, just were tourists and not med students for a week. And I think it's important to have kind of that good work-life balance.
Are there opportunities for global health experiences or global health? If so, when do they do that?
So, with our curriculum, the second year is the core clerkships, where the students will rotate through like OB-GYN, Gen Med, Peds, surgery, things of that nature. They also have 2-week electives in there every block, just if they wanted to learn more about oncology or cardiology or something. During your third and fourth year, that's our immersion phase, where students can immerse themselves in what they're passionate about. And so we have a degree audit where students can log in and see what they have to take in order to graduate. You have to take a couple of integrated science courses. You have to take an acting internship, things like that. But you have a lot of flexibility in what you do during the third and fourth year. So we've had this curriculum now for 6 years, and we have not had anybody do the same thing twice. Everybody's done kind of their own thing. And so there's lots of great electives out there. And so a lot of our students will do a global health experience. We have a clinic in Kenya, Africa, that sometimes our students will do. We also have a Med Scholar year, where students can take a year out of the curriculum, be a full-time researcher for a year. And one of my students is in Madrid right now doing that. Let's see. We have a lot of students that will do fellowships, where they've been picked up for a fellowship in, the Auschwitz Peds. And they'll do that. So we encourage students to have those great experiences while they're in medical school. We also have something here called the Vanderbilt Institute for Global Health, VIG, because we have a Master of Public Health program, and they kind of also help out with students when they're trying to find global opportunities.
Okay, so that's kind of a warehouse or a clearinghouse of other things that may not be on the radar at the med school. So I felt like when I was looking at your curriculum, so the first year that's 13 months, and they're doing the case-based kind of hybrid with lecture and TBL. And then the second year is 10 months, and that's really clinical year, right?
That's it. Yeah.
How do they feel about everything? Do you hear concerns from maybe prospective applicants? Are they ever kind of skeptical? Like, so you're cramming all this didactic stuff into the 13 months? Like, is there ever like some...
Exactly. Yeah. People who don't know about it will always ask, like, how'd you cram 2 years of med school into 1 year?
I hear it all the time.
Yeah. But the thing is, that would be insane if we did that. Like your body just could not handle all that information. So we don't do that. So the best way to kind of describe our curriculum is to use like just colors. So like your first year is red, your second year is blue, your last 2 years are purple. It's a blend of the sciences and the clinicals that you get your first year and your second year into your third and fourth year. And so a lot of the things that you learn your third year pick up on something you learned about during your first year, but you didn't have the in-depth clinical experience for it to really make sense. But now that you're third year, we're picking it back up because you've had the sciences, you've had the clinical exposure for you to have that aha moment during your third and fourth year.
I always advise people, trust the system, trust the journey, right? Trust the process, the people that put this in place.
Yes.
They know what they're doing and they're graduating great students every year.
Absolutely. So absolutely.
It may look a little different on paper, but in the process, just get in there and trust the journey.
That's exactly it. And we'll have students that, they express concern coming into it and they go, I don't know if I can keep up with it. And I'm like, if we didn't think you could, you wouldn't have been admitted. So we know you can do this, and you're going to be fine. And then once they're in it, they're like, oh, I love it because, I'm not in a lecture hall all day long and I get clinical exposure right away. And then they go into their second year and they're so confident going into those clinics because they've had a year of clinical exposure before they started their core clerkship so that they feel very comfortable walking in and taking a history, making eye contact with a patient, that kind of stuff. Those skills that under an old curriculum, they wouldn't get until their third year of medical school. And they just were awkward about it during their third year because, oh, wow, I'm finally around a patient. Yay. And
steeper learning curve.
Yes, exactly.
What about board study? People always ask us, do we have dedicated time for board studies? So how do students at Vanderbilt study for boards?
So our timing is that the step one of the USMLE is after the second year. And we do not have a prep course that students have to pay for and take because I always tell my students, your curriculum is your prep course. I mean, we've taught you what you're going to need to be prepared for to be successful in step one. And we're very fortunate that our students have always done amazingly well on step one. That's not a concern for our school. I mean, our students always do very well on it. So we have a break in the curriculum and you can take your step one whenever you wish. So you want to take it the first week out and have, the rest of your time to have fun and take vacation before your third year. Great. You want to spend that entire time studying and take it the last possible moment. Great. That's fine. Whatever is the best fit for you during that time. You want to stay in Nashville and prep. Great. You want to go home to Seattle and prep. Great. You want to go on vacation with your family and then come back and prep. Great. Everybody's a little bit different with that.
Yeah. How about, where do students live in the area there? I saw online, you don't have student housing. I think there are places outside the major metropolitan areas don't offer student housing. So what's that like for students? So
our students live wherever they want to live. And a lot of it depends on kind of their personal situation. So some of our students have children. They might be looking for a good school district, or I want to live where my kids can walk to school. Okay, great. Some of our students come to medical school. Their significant other is a grown-up. He or she is done with school and they have a jobby job and they want to live somewhere else because they don't want to live close to school. That's fine. But most of our students will live within walking distance or a short bike ride to campus. The great thing with Nashville is that the weather is pretty awesome year round here. We do have cold days in the winter where you'll have to bust out with your winter coat, but we don't have snow here. We don't have ice.
Neither do we. No.
Oh, really? You guys got rid of it?
No, yeah, we stopped using that a while ago. We just tell people it snows here.
Can I tell a tale about one time you were going to visit me at Georgia Tech and you guys got snow and you were snowed in?
Yeah.
Should I not go there? Okay.
That was just my excuse. I had my daughter's birthday that day. I forgot about that.
Did you forget about it? Well, I didn't forget about it because I remember stepping outside. It was 74 degrees, sunny and beautiful. And I was on the phone with you and I said, you're snowed in? Really? It's snowing somewhere in this country right now? You're like, yeah, I love it in.
Oh, that's
So,
funny.
yep. But I will say with the snow, sometimes you do miss it. It's beautiful to look at and stuff. But for Southerners, we don't handle snow very well. So whenever it snows, we
They
roll up the
shut down.
sidewalks, we shut down. I mean, it's hardcore.
Well, that's the difference, Jen. Up here, when it does snow, your education will not be interrupted.
Oh, that's a good selling point.
Yeah. you get to still come to school and keep on trucking.
That's a good spin. I like that.
So when you say so we have graduation coming up. It's May, and graduation's coming up, and you see some of these students that have come through the whole process. What do you, when you see them walking out the door there, what do you identify some characteristics or qualities that you really feel makes for a successful student at Vanderbilt?
So I have a confession, and the people in my office know this, but I always take commencement off. I cannot be here when they graduate. That is
yeah, I get misty.
I can't handle it. I did it like my first year, and I was like, we're done here. No more of this. So it's a personal day that I take off, and I run errands and stuff, and I just pretend that my students are just going on a clinical experience, and I'll see them again soon.
Yeah.
Because it's just too much. But I do go to like their match day ceremony, and I always cry during match day because I'm so excited for them. Yeah. But I think for a lot of our students, it's really neat to see the way they've kind of developed into themselves during the 4 years here. We have students that, come in and, they're really interested in medicine for XYZ reason. And once they're here, they got very involved with maybe healthcare advocacy. And so they've spent time, because Nashville's a capital city, they spent their time here working with legislators to create policy and laws and stuff to benefit our patients in the state of Tennessee. I think that's exciting when they've done that. Or while they've been here, they, took a year off and got a second degree, a master's of divinity, master's of education, MBA or something. And it's just really neat what all they've accomplished, and they've taken opportunities to do. And I know that you guys are the same way. You guys have all these wonderful opportunities for students. Yeah, you can come in, put your nose to the ground and just get your MD degree, and that's fine. But there are all these wonderful things that you can accomplish while you're in medical school. And we love to see our students do that. Even things that, like, we have a salsa club here, so we have dancers.
Yeah.
And excuse me, one of my students, he's actually graduating, and he had never danced before until he came to Vanderbilt, and he got very interested in our dance club just as a way to let off steam and stuff. And now he performs with them and does salsa dancing. It's just really neat, that they come into themselves while they're here.
So you're also saying there's time to have fun.
Yes.
There's time to have fun.
Absolutely.
Okay, just to kind of wrap this up a little bit about the curriculum and about the school itself. What's something that can't be found about Vanderbilt on your well-groomed, fancy website? Like, what's something you'd like people to know? Like, when you go out and you tell people about Vanderbilt, like, you want them to know, but it's maybe hidden somewhere, or it's not something tangible that's on a fancy website.
Well, I think you kind of hit the message when you said, there's time to do things. Vanderbilt really puts a lot of emphasis on student wellness. We think it's very important for our students to develop successful coping mechanisms to deal with stress, a good way to learn work-time balance, those kind of skills that we can't teach you in a lecture hall, So that's the reason why we have carved off, protected study time, so that you're not, you're in class from 8 to 5, and then you heat up something in your microwave for dinner, and then you study until 10 o'clock at night. Yeah, I mean, that's no way to live. So that's why we bake in protected study time, so that you do have a good work-life balance. And so we have a lot of students who are involved in intramurals. We tend to dominate intramurals here at Vanderbilt.
It's a pass-fail curriculum, but it is fun to win sometimes.
It is, absolutely. Absolutely. We have a lot of former athletes that are in medical school here, and professional athletes, and also college athletes, or just people who, played sports when they were in undergrad or high school and stuff. So our intramural program is pretty pretty strong. We have a lot of interest clubs for people. We have a really strong student-run health clinic for students who are really passionate about giving back to underserved Nashvilleians that our students really take the leadership on. So I think for us, like, I love it when people get to come on campus to interview because they really get to meet the students who are doing those really cool things that we mentioned on our website, and the other thing is, like, our students they're just nice people. We're kind of known for being like the nice medical school, and that's fine. I mean, everyone here is just really nice,
down to earth, nice, polite, people.
Absolutely. Like, our dean has a pillow in her office that says, "Be nice or leave." And so we're just nice, friendly people here. Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because that is something that I think sometimes websites can be very sterile, but you got to get information across. But you can't put on your website without sounding kind of maybe disingenuous, like, we're really nice here.
Right.
Training leaders of tomorrow, and we're really nice.
Exactly.
So, but to hear you say that to people, I think that sounds more authentic than to just put on a website. We're a great med school, and we're also really nice.
We are. We're really nice. And I think, kind of going back to the pass-fail curriculum, we don't pit our students against each other. It's not like we rank the class where you're number 5 in the class and I'm number 17 in the class, and you're not going to help me study because you don't want me to leapfrog ahead of you and stuff. And so, like, when we always tell our students, like, when the tide comes in, all the ships rise. So when it's time for, taking an exam, the students all look after each other and share resources. And, hey, I found this really cool website. You should use this for your flashcards. Or I did research in cardiology in my gap year, and the PI had this really cool, diagram for this. And here you go. The sharing of resources. I think our students really look after each other with
important. That is so important. Anything new coming down the road in the future for Vanderbilt that you'd like people to know about?
So we're starting to expand some of our offerings, like with our graduate programs. So we just started a Master's of Gen Ed Counseling here. So that's opening up a lot of different opportunities. We also are really focusing a lot on medical innovation and design. We have a program track for medical students who already have their PhDs in engineering or applied sciences.
Oh, I saw that.
And so during the immersion phase, the 3rd and 4th year, the students who are in the MIDP program have the opportunity to create medical devices and work on medical entrepreneurship and things of that nature. And not only is it for the students in the MIDP program, but also our regular students who have an interest in medical device and design can also take those courses with them. So I think that's very exciting, kind of that new intersection between healthcare delivery and technology.
I thought that was very unique when I saw that.
Yeah. We also have an interest group for students that are interested in medical technology. So they will bring guest speakers in and work on things and do like hackathons on how can we make this better for our patients, that kind of thing.
Great. All right. Well, you want to dive into listener questions?
Yeah, let's do this.
Ready? Okay.
Awesome.
You need a break?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. All right, cool. Let's see. Do you want to ask me the first one?
I would love to.
Okay.
So this is going to be Patrick from Davidson College.
Okay.
Wants to know, how will I know how the interview is set up?
Okay. Well, Patrick, I think we can chat about this. When you get the interview invite, most of the time, and on websites that are open to people, they'll tell you how the interview is set up, like what type of interview it's going to be, right? When do you guys tell people? I mean,
we do the same thing. So like when they're locked in, we're like, hey, this is how it's going to work for you.
So the school should tell you what to expect. 1 interview, 2 interviews, 1 interview that's long, 1 that's short, or MMI, the multi-mini interview, panel interview. So they'll tell you what to expect on that day. And I think if you take the time to read the materials that you're sent, you should be prepared, at least to start to learn how to prepare for that interview day. Especially if it's an MMI, they'll frequently tell you, this is some tips and tricks on how to prepare for our interview day. Because I think the MMI sometimes for some applicants is a little bit of a black box.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Anything to add to that?
Nope. I think that kind of sets it up nicely. I just really want to stress to the listeners here to remember that the interview day is a two-way street. So, we tell you what the interview day is going to be like, but if we just said, "Hey, Patrick, come interview with us," feel comfortable reaching out to say, can I know a little bit more about the interview day?
Yeah.
Because we're happy to share that information with you.
And I go back and I kind of said it kind of half jokingly, but if you read the materials that they send you, like take the time to read through the email. A lot of times schools will have links to a particular, say, interview day website. Mm-hmm. It'll give you information on how to find the office and tips on how to prepare for that day. So I think taking the time to read that, and sometimes there's YouTube videos, like watch those things, like digest it all, because your friends that are in business and they're going to interview at companies are tearing apart everything they know about that company to prepare for that interview day. You should be doing the same.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I have a question for you, Jen. Rachel from TCU wants to know, how does someone nail their med school interview?
Ooh. Wow, Rachel, that's a good question.
I know, it's a big one.
Yeah, I would say honestly, be authentic on your interview day. Know your application backwards and forwards. We like what we saw in their application materials, or else you wouldn't have been invited for an interview. I mean, no medical school is going to take time out of their busy day to interview, to play gotcha, you made a C in Orgo, gotcha, no, we're not going to do that, but we might want to know what happened with that C in Orgo, what happened in organic chemistry. And so being prepared to kind of answer honestly what happened with that. But I think honestly, like the people that after interview day, I'm like, okay, that person has to get accepted. We love her. Yeah. Or just those people that are just fun to be around. Like we had a second year student now. And I remember her interview day, like it was yesterday, because I remember thinking, I don't want her to leave. Like she is funny and smart and just a delight to be around. And those are the people that really nail their interview day.
Yep. I feel sometimes in my head think, okay, I have a minivan. And we get to help them pack up their stuff and move here.
Yes.
I don't want them to leave.
Oh, I know. Exactly. Well, that actually makes me feel better to know, because I feel the same way. And then I feel kind of stalkerish, gosh, well,
right. Would it be awkward if I reached across the desk and said, you can't leave?
Right. Exactly. Can I hug you? Am I allowed to hug you? Because I want you to be my best friend. Yeah.
So I think it comes back to authenticity, being genuine. I know it sounds cliche to say, just be yourself, but
absolutely,
I know it. And it's a very nerve-wracking day. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be anxious, but gosh, if you can just kind of push that down a little bit and let yourself, the real self, kind of shine through, people will see it, I think.
Absolutely. And I do want to say one other thing. You brought up a good point about your friends that are in the business, world that are just kind of tear apart information. If you don't appear interested in us on interview day, that sends us a really strong message.
Yep.
So, do your homework, know something about us, and know stuff that's not readily available on our website. If you have questions on our website, that's cool. If you say, hey, I saw on your web that you have Curriculum 2.0, and I was wondering, our first year is expected to do research. We're happy to discuss that, but don't just say, do y'all have research going on here? I don't know these things, because unfortunately nowadays with social media, with websites, the information is out there. It just takes you a couple of minutes to really do your homework on that.
Yeah. I think to kind of go back to Rachel's question is that I think in that same vein, asking perceptive questions can stand out. The things you ask really can go, wow, the interviewer will frequently comment and say, they asked me some great questions about the school or about Cleveland that showed that they're really interested and they weren't just, kind of passing the time.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
That's how that stands out too. I have one from Jenny for you from the University of Miami in Florida. She said, I've heard that you really should practice interviewing before your med school interview. You're right, Jenny. She's like, but I don't know where to begin with that.
Yeah. So when I was an advisor, my office,
perfect.
yeah. So we were connected with the Career Center. And so a lot of career centers have interviewing software where you can go in and it's like a little webcam that will, like, the software will just ask you random questions and you can respond to it and it records you, and then you can watch the recording afterwards to see like facial expressions, body language, that kind of thing. So check to see if your career center, if you're still in college, if they have that service. I also used to do mock interviews with my advisees to get them comfortable talking about themselves. It's a skill. It's hard because we are in a society where you don't want to come across as a braggart. Like, nobody wants the person who's like, oh, I, me, and stuff. So it's kind of a delicate balance with being able to take pride in the things that you've accomplished and not sound like an arrogant, jerk about that. So being comfortable just kind of talking about those things is very, very important. And if you don't have those resources, ask somebody that you trust to just say, just ask me some questions, and it can be like your roommate or whatever, and he or she can just ask you random questions. So just the more you get comfortable talking about the things you've done, the better you are.
Yeah, they don't have to be quote unquote med school questions.
Right,
they can just be, how would your best friends describe you? Like that, just that's kind of the interview questions you're going to get in a way.
Exactly.
With some schools.
Yep.
I tell you what you were saying earlier about recording yourself. I think that if you can set that up, if your career center doesn't have that, which just sounds really cool, if you can set it up yourself and record, as uncomfortable as it is to watch yourself,
totally awkward. It's horrible,
it's awful. But you can really learn a lot by watching yourself, and wear your suit.
Yes.
Because you're going to be in uncomfortable clothes on your interview day and uncomfortable shoes where you might be tugging at your shirt sleeves or your collar or you're adjusting your jacket. You wouldn't see that until you watched it and maybe you had other people watch it and go, you're always picking at your cuff links. Like that's kind of distracting, or you're playing with your tie too much. So I think that sometimes it's those kind of repetitive behaviors that you don't notice or can't see until you actually watch and listen to something like that, or repetitive verbal like things that people always say, or they end every sentence with and whatnot, that you might not know you're doing until you practice. And somebody says, yeah, you say like a lot, like all the time. So
that is very true. When I was at Georgia Tech, I remember I was doing a mock interview with one of my students and he kept playing with his watch. And I'm doing the action right now that you obviously cannot see on a podcast, but basically he was just kind of turning it around with his other hand while it was on his wrist. And so, we recorded it, the mock interview, and then I showed it back to him and I said, notice that you keep doing this does your watch irritate you? He goes, well, to be honest with you, this isn't even my watch. It's my roommate's watch. I don't own a watch, but I heard that I was supposed to wear a watch for interviews so that interviewers think I'm punctual. He said, but usually I just look at my cell phone. I'm like, okay, so let's not wear the watch, honey, because that's not good.
Yeah, it's not working for you.
Yeah, exactly. I said, I think you're reading too much into this. We're not going to med schools aren't going to pay attention to whether you wear a watch or not, unless you're incredibly late for your interview. And then
right. So, oh boy. Okay. Hopefully we got that. Jenny feels better about that.
Exactly. But yeah, and the other thing is, like I said, being comfortable talking about yourself, but also being able to address things like, why do you want to be a doctor, and not rattling on your response so long. You tend to lose somebody's interest after about a minute or two. So really kind of being a little more succinct on questions that you can almost bet money will be asked. Questions like, why this medical school? Is this your first time in our town, or what draws you to our city? Why do you want to be a doctor? Tell me about yourself. Kind of those questions that will probably be asked in some shape, form, or fashion on your interview.
Yep, you're absolutely. You don't have them practice them, but don't have them memorized. Where you're like reading from a paragraph in your mind.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
Mhm. Yep. And speaking about the tell me about yourself, Blake from the University of Oregon wants to know. I always struggle with the tell me about yourself question. Do you have any recommendations?
I struggle with this one too,
Same.
because I don't ask this question of people because I
Really?
struggle with it. I always kind of think of what would I feel like if I was asked this? And for me, it's just, I kind of want to like, where do you want me to begin?
Yeah.
But I think you might be able to extrapolate from this. What would you want admissions committee to know about you that may or may not already be in your application? What do you think about that? I mean, think of it that way, right?
Yep.
Because this interviewer is going to be reporting back to the admissions committee, and they're going to take some of this info from the tell me about yourself response, and that's going to be part of their evaluation.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So I know it's very kind of a nebulous kind of question, but I think if you think of it a different way, like, okay, they're asking me, what would if I was sitting in front of a panel of admissions committee people and probably sweating through my suit, what would you want them to know? What would you want them to know about you? So maybe don't like tell them like, I was a Spanish major and I graduated this, last May, but other attributes about yourself that maybe might not be, maybe you could phrase it in like, well, you've probably read a lot about me in my application. I was trying to think of some things you might not know about me that's not included in my application that's important about me. And that would be, I grew up in a small town on a farm, and that's not real, start there and see.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Right. And then you don't have to give us a lecture about raising goats on a small town farm. You could just leave it at that. And then your interviewer might say, oh, so what kind of farm was it? Oh, we raised goats. Wow. How did your family get interested in goat farming?
Yeah.
Tell me how you raise a goat.
Directions.
Exactly. Because it's that's a conversation, so don't feel like you have to basically give a dissertation on as your response for every question asked, be it tell me about yourself or, why do you want to be a physician or whatever. Allow it to be more conversational in tone.
Yeah. Okay. How about this would be a fun one. Zach from Penn State wants to know, he says, okay, asking for a friend. How does someone really screw up their interview?
Well, Zach, I know this didn't happen to you. This happened to your friend.
Right.
Oh goodness. So I think for us, the people who after they leave here were like, absolutely not, are the ones that are the yeah buts, the
looking, screening for the yeah buts.
Exactly. And then also people who just didn't seem engaged with us, with their body language, with their facial expression, with the questions that they would ask during downtime, because I'm readily available to our interviewees the entire day. I'm either with them or I'm walking them to another location for a session or whatever. So if we're making small talk and it's crickets, that's concerning.
I always feel that you can screw up your interview by using profanity.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I don't like that at all. If I'm interviewing people, I'm not usually swearing. I don't know why the person that I'm interviewing feels it's okay to curse. And this is a very, very small percentage of people. But when it does happen, I'm kind of like, really? Like, we're trying to have a professional setting here. And because I think we're trying to look into a crystal ball and see, do we want you hanging out with patients?
Exactly.
And a patient's going to trust you. You already look young. If you act young, they're not going to trust you.
Very true.
I think that's how you can really screw up your interview. I think also being disparaging to other applicants and maybe condescending to other applicants. I sometimes every year usually hear somebody out in the waiting room kind of saying, so where else are you interviewing?
Oh, yeah.
Or like, I was just at this other school and it was just kind of lame. Like, you don't know if somebody else might be accepted there already. And then they feel bad. You just you hear the darndest things on interview days.
That is very true. Very true. And I will say, like, if your interview asks you a question and you say one thing and you go, ooh, that was not what I meant to say. You know what, Zach, or whoever, your friend, Zach, whoever's listening to this, it's totally fine to say, you know what, let me stop for a moment. I told you X, and the more I think about that, I'd rather tell you about Y instead. And that's fine. We know that your full-time job is not to interview at med schools across the country. Like we know that this might be your first med school interview. This might be your only med school interview, and that's fine, So, but we just don't want you to regret things when you're driving or flying home going, oh, I can't believe I said that. I'm such an idiot. Oh, I'm never going to get accepted now.
That's
totally
excellent.
fine.
Awesome point. Yeah. And I think too, even if it is your first interview, it's okay to tell us that.
Yeah.
Because that also puts context to what we're seeing that day.
Exactly.
That might go into an evaluation like, Zach told me this is his first interview and he was naturally a little nervous.
Yep.
We get it, but he settled in and things went fine.
And I will tell you that I see that a lot, especially with our folks that interview in September, because we do interview a little bit earlier than some other schools. And so I will see notes that'll say, Zach confessed that this was his first med school interview, so he was a little nervous. But after a while, he warmed up. And that, you said it exactly. It just puts things into context.
How about a couple more and then we'll wrap it up? What about... let's see. Anthony from St. Louis University says, what do people wear to the interview? Should they bring anything like a notebook, a resume? Like, what do you kind of show up with, I guess is kind of the question there.
So I like it when students bring kind of a padfolio somewhere they can jot notes or, take notes, and a place where they can store the handouts that we give. I just think it looks more polished. But I don't hold it against somebody if they don't. I mean, that's totally fine. But it's nice if your brain is going to kind of turn to mush, if you know it will, to have some questions jotted down ahead of time in your padfolio that you can kind of pull out and go, oh, okay, as I was looking at your website, I saw this, or, a friend of mine went to med school here and she said X, Y, and Z, or that kind of thing. For us, you don't need to bring a resume. We have everything. About you in your application materials. But if you interview in January and you submitted your AMCAS in June, the year before, and you've been awarded new things and that kind of thing, you are more than welcome for Vanderbilt, to send us an update to your file, and we'll put that in, and that's totally fine.
Totally agree. Totally agree. What about attire?
So I think I tend to advise, like when I was a pre-med advisor, I tended to advise my students to be a little more conservative than not. Dress what you think a doctor would dress like, a suit, a tie, for women, a nice blouse, that kind of thing. Make sure it's something that's comfortable, that fits, so you're not tugging at your, neckline or yanking down the hem of your pants to cover your socks, that kind of thing. Tailors can be your best friend. So if you go suit shopping, the suit off the rack is probably not going to fit you 100%. So you're probably going to take it to a tailor to, maybe have it taken in a little bit here or let the hem out a little bit. So give yourself plenty of time to make that happen when you're suit shopping. People always say, oh, you have to wear like a dark colored suit. No, you want to wear a suit that's comfortable, that you feel confident in. I always tell people, you're going to feel more natural wearing what you would want to wear. So if I told you, oh, you have to wear a black suit and a white shirt, if that's not your comfort zone, then don't do it, but don't wear like a t-shirt and yoga pants. I mean, dress part of a doctor. Suits are very expensive. And so, if money is an issue, I've seen people wear like a blazer, for men, like a sports coat, like a navy blazer and khaki pants, and that's fine. I've seen women wear like white button-down shirts and black skirts, and that's fine too. So just make sure that it's something that you can feel comfortable sitting in, making sure that the skirt doesn't ride up a little too far. Make sure that, the buttons don't stretch when you sit down, that kind of thing. Just make sure it fits well.
You want to be as comfortable as you can be in dressy clothes. Exactly. Keep cologne and perfume to a minimum, if
Minimum.
not at all. Like,
Yeah.
because people have allergies to that stuff, and you don't want to. And I'm just trying to think other things that.
Shoes.
Yeah, comfortable
Definitely wear
shoes.
comfortable shoes. For us, you're walking to your interviews, and it could be like a 10-minute walk from this building.
Mm-hmm.
So I always feel bad for my women when they show up on interview day and they're wearing like, 3-inch stilettos. I'm like, oof,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
feet are just going to
Yeah.
be miserable today. So I would definitely take comfortable shoes over fashionable shoes.
Yeah.
So
And I think it's okay too to bring shoes, especially
mhm.
for women, if you're wearing, a slightly uncomfortable shoe. That if there's a tour coming up, I've had some female interviews say, "Does it mind if I put on my workout shoes really
Yep.
quick?" I'm like, "Yeah, totally."
Yeah, really
And
fine.
I did mention earlier that sometimes we do get a little snow up here, and some students will come in like they'll wear different shoes in to the interview,
Oh,
so they
that's a good
don't get
point.
your nice shoes dirty or wet, and
Yeah.
and then you can change it. I think admissions people are pretty reasonable. Like we're not
Yeah.
going to grill you on what shoes you're changing into and out of.
No, yeah,
We want you
you're
to be
good.
comfortable. Yeah.
Exactly. Like for us, when you show up on interview day, we have a locker for you, and it's a pretty good size locker. I mean, it fits
Oh,
like a
that's nice.
suitcase. Yeah, like bigger than like your carry-on suitcase would be. And so we'll have students that will go to their locker in downtime and change out their shoes. But it's always funny because a lot of students will change into kind of more comfortable clothes after their interview's over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And since I still see them in the hallway, my brain like takes a moment to go, okay,
Oh.
I just talked to that girl all day long, and she is very different now because she's wearing, a t-shirt and yoga pants, but
Yeah.
that's not how my brain is processing this. So I like look at them like, because I'm not a very bright woman evidently, and I'll be like, I know you from somewhere. Oh,
Yeah.
that's right, we just spent the entire day together.
Yeah.
That's where I know you from.
I always think I would love to be in jeans and a t-shirt right now. So
Absolutely.
they're like, do you mind if we change? I'm like, I don't care. I'd love to be in jeans.
I know. Can I change too?
Yeah.
Are we good with that? Absolutely. And so like for us and you guys too, take the rest of the afternoon, the evening to kind of explore the community that you would be calling home for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
For most people, this is their first time on our campus. It's their first time in our town for some people. So use this as a way to kind of help you make that final decision, because hopefully you'll be lucky enough to have multiple acceptances on the table. And instead of having to fly back to all these different schools you've been admitted to for second looks and whatnot, trying to remember a little bit about that community.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the other thing is for interviewing, you're incurring the interview expense, the flights, the hotels. Like we have student hosts that you can stay with, but not every med school does.
Yeah.
So budget accordingly for that. And then if you are admitted to a school, please attend their second look.
If you can make it happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you can't, if all the schools you've been admitted to have their revisit weekend on the same weekend, all of us would be more than happy to sit down and talk with you on the phone or through Skype or whatever to help you in making that final decision.
Yeah, those are fun weekends and great opportunities just to kind of see the school through a different lens.
Yep. And it's fun because our students do a lot of the planning for it, and they always get just so hyped up and excited about showing their favorite things about Nashville and Vanderbilt to our interviewees.
Because they see themselves in those shoes. Like Absolutely. I was just there a year ago. I get this, and we want to make it a great experience for you. I completely agree. I think it's a great way to wrap things up, Jen. Those were good.
Absolutely.
Any final thoughts? Like is there a book or a film or website or something favorite you'd like to recommend to listeners to check out, medically related or non-medically related?
No, I will say this. There are tons of websites out there and books that you can buy and stuff, but pay attention to where you're getting your information from. Sometimes, like on some of the social media platforms for pre-med students, I've seen some erroneous things posted about Vanderbilt or about the admissions process. So if you ever have questions, don't just post something to a random website forum and say, what do you think about this? Reach out to the schools to ask your question.
Yep. Yeah. You don't want anonymous people trying to give you advice.
No, I mean, hello, there are trolls everywhere. Like, why would you trust them to this? So, but,
yeah. Jen, this has been really fun. I really appreciate your time today.
It's been a pleasure.
And on the show here.
Yeah, no, it's great that you're doing this for pre-med students. I think that if the pre-med students listen to all of the episodes, I think they're going to learn a lot about the application.
Thank you. I couldn't do it without all of you being a part of this. So I'm very grateful. Thank you so much, Jen.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right. You rocked it.
I did not.
What a great interview. I want to thank Jen Stephen Kimball again for taking a lot of time out of her day to be on the show with me today. We had a lot of fun putting that one together, if you couldn't tell. And I hope you walk away with some extra wisdom, whether it's about some of the tips we covered along the way or about interview days and of course about the medical school there at Vandy. If you enjoyed this episode, again, please share this with your friends, your pre-med classmates. If you want to get some more information that might be covered in the show, a lot of times I post extra references that people brought up during the show with some links to other sites. You can check that out at the show page, which is case.edu/medicine/all-access. That's case.edu/medicine/all-access. And you heard us take listener questions, and so you control the back end of this show. So feel free to send us your questions at allaccess@case.edu with a concise question, your name, and the school you attend or attended, and maybe someday we'll read it on the air. So thanks again. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes, write a review. That's always helpful, and we'll see you again next time.